Listen, if you want to know the exact moment when the old world finally divorced America, it was Monday afternoon, January 26th, 2026. The scene was the European Parliament. NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte stood there looking into the eyes of Europe's leaders and said, "If anyone thinks that all of Europe can defend itself without America, keep dreaming. You cannot." He didn't just say that. In a single sentence, he dismissed centuries of military history. The panic in the room was as if it were echoing with screams. You could literally see French and Polish officials fuming. Why? Because Rutte has spent his entire first year acting as a band-aid for the White House, rather than the leader of a 32-nation alliance. But here's the real shock. Within hours, France's foreign minister struck back with a cold, hard reality. Europeans can and are taking responsibility for their security. This is no longer just about strategic autonomy. This is a rebellion. While Rutte is busy trying to save the transatlantic marriage, EU leaders have already started moving the furniture out. They are no longer dreaming. They are building a shadow NATO that does not need an American signature to protect its borders. The threat of 100% Canada-style tariffs and the Greenland issue have pushed Europe to the brink. They have realized that being a member of the America Plus 31 Club means they could be insecure just one post on Truth Social away. The "You Are Out" movement has begun, and Rutte might be the last person to realize that his office is being ignored. So, what does Shadow NATO actually look like? It is not just a fancy name. It is a parallel command structure that has been quietly built since May 2025, a $150 billion war chest. While the White House was focused on the Greenland issue, the European Commission pushed the button to operate a financial weapon called Safe Security Action for Europe, SAFE. Funding. On Monday, January 26, 2026, while Mark Rutte was lecturing the European Parliament, the EU officially approved the second wave of funding, a $150 billion in direct loans. Transfer of power. This is not American money. This is money that the EU is borrowing itself on its own credit to build a European pillar. The biggest beneficiary, Poland, which has received about $44 billion, the largest share of any country, bypassing the American general. This is the gap of curiosity that should be terrifying for the Pentagon. For 75 years, the Supreme Allied Commander Europe, SACEUR, has always been an American general. But Shadow NATO is built to work outside this chain. Outline of the Nancy Agreement. Under the France-Poland-Nancy Agreement, Paris and Warsaw are establishing a common strategic culture. They are building command hubs that do not need an American general's approval to move troops or launch Mirage jets. Sovereign standards. They are stipulating that 65% of all equipment bought with safe money must be 100% European-made. They are literally excluding American hardware from future defense. The scramble at NATO headquarters in Brussels is over the fact that the alliance is becoming two different entities stuck in the same building. On the first floor, you have Mark Rutte trying to keep Trump happy. On the second floor, the EU is building an army that can survive the great transatlantic divorce. As one French official said, if the American umbrella is transactional, then we need a roof made of European steel. Now we must talk about the most dangerous part of this divorce. For decades, the security of all of Europe depended on one thing: the American nuclear umbrella. But by Thursday, January 29th, 2026, that umbrella is full of holes. The Nancy Agreement bombshell. While the mainstream media was focused on trade, Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk and French President Emmanuel Macron were in the eastern French city of Nancy signing a groundbreaking deal. Clause. It includes a premium security guarantee that puts Poland on par with Germany. The nuclear question. Tusk clearly stated that America is no longer the sole security umbrella. Poland is carefully reviewing Macron's offer to extend the French nuclear deterrent to the east. This is the gap of curiosity. Why would Poland, Europe's biggest supporter of America, suddenly look to Paris for protection? The reason is that the French force de frappe is the only nuclear stockpile in the EU that is 100% independent. Unlike Britain, which relies on American technology, France's 290 nuclear weapons are solely under the control of the French president. The final warning doctrine. France has a unique doctrine where they can carry out a limited nuclear strike as a final warning. Macron has indicated that he is ready to extend this warning to protect allies. Panic in Moscow. The panic is not just in Washington, it is in the Kremlin. Russia called this French move extremely aggressive. But for Poland, which is building Europe's strongest army by size and leading NATO in defense spending at nearly 5% of GDP, the French nuclear shield is the missing piece of the puzzle. They are not dreaming of post-America defense. They are building an atomic wall that does not need approval from a transactional White House. If you think the Great Divorce is just talk, mark July 7th, 2026 on your calendar. This is the date of the Ankara summit in Turkey. But while the official NATO invitation says unity, the secret shadow agenda circulating in European capitals tells a completely different story. The demand for 5% now or never. This is the spark that is going to turn Ankara into a battlefield. In June 2025 in The Hague, NATO allies technically agreed to move toward a 5% GDP spending target by 2035. It was supposed to be a slow path. The Trump twist. This week, by Wednesday, January 28, 2026, reports are that the White House has torn up the timeline. Trump is not waiting for 2035. His national defense strategy released this month makes it clear that it is 5% now or America leaves. The Buy American trap. It gets even worse. The administration is signaling that if you want this 5% to count as paying your share, you have to spend it on American-made hardware. No more French Rafale jets, no more German Leopard tanks, only F-35s and Abrams tanks. The Ankara ultimatum. This is the not united moment. But here's the curiosity trigger. Europe has finally found its no. In a series of leaks from the Board of Peace deliberations, we have found that Macron, Starmer, and the newly aligned Polish leadership are preparing a united front. They are taking a counter-ultimatum to Ankara. They are refusing this accelerated and buy American order. Their message is simple. We will spend 5%, but we will spend it on European industries, under European command, and with a European nuclear shield. The panic in D.C. is over the fact that their leverage is gone. If America threatens to leave in Ankara, the shadow NATO is already there to pick up the broken pieces. Trump thinks he's going into a room to collect checks. Instead, he is going into a room where the locks have already been changed. The Ankara ultimatum is not just a negotiation. It is the moment when Europe says to the American president, "You don't fire us, we fire you." This is the part that keeps high-ranking Pentagon officials awake. For nearly 80 years, American bases in Europe, like Ramstein in Germany and Aviano in Italy, were considered sacred ground. They were not just bases. They were physical proof of the American security guarantee. But by Thursday morning, January 29th, 2026, that sacred ground has started to look like a real estate burden, the base tax strategy. Panic in Washington began when the EU's Anti-Coercion Office launched a quiet study on military land use fees. Logic. If America considers Europe a trade rival, hits German cars with reciprocity tariffs, and taxes French wine for a border wall, then why should the EU provide free land, water, and electricity to 80,000 American troops? The rent ultimatum. We are hearing rumors of a secret proposal circulating in Brussels. Defense offset. For every dollar America collects from illegal tariffs, host countries will collect an equal amount as security maintenance fees for the protection of American bases. The threat of eviction. But it goes even deeper. In the outline of Shadow NATO, there is a section called Base Nationalization. The idea is that if America withdraws its nuclear umbrella or makes the alliance transactional, European countries will demand these facilities be vacated within 24 months. They want to turn Ramstein into a European strategic transport hub run by the EU and for the EU. Here is the nuclear option of curiosity diplomacy. You tax our exports, we tax your power. Trump's view is that America is doing Europe a favor by being there. But shadow NATO leaders are flipping the script. They are telling the White House, if you are not an ally, you are merely a tenant. And the rent has now gone up 1,000%. By the time we reach the Ankara summit in July, the American military could face the most expensive eviction notice in history. If you want to see what European sovereignty looks like in practice, just look at the events of the last 48 hours. On Tuesday, January 27th, 2026, while the White House was entangled in the effects of the 100% Canada tariff, Ukraine's defense minister Mikhailo Fedorov was in deep talks with his French counterpart Catherine Vautrin, the Mirage supply chain. France didn't just promise more jets, they proved that to run a high-intensity war, they don't need Pentagon approval. Fedorov confirmed that Ukraine expects additional supplies of Mirage 2005 fighter jets. Independence of hardware? Unlike F-16s, which require massive American logistics and end-user permission for every bolt, the Mirage fleet is supported by a 100% European supply chain. From Mica missiles to Scalp cruise missiles, Paris is proving that Europe can maintain a modern air force without making a call to Washington. The AASM factor. But here is the curiosity trigger. France is also sending more AISM hammer-guided bombs. These are the same smart bombs that America tried to restrict in the past. By filling Ukraine with French-made technology, Macron is not just helping Kyiv. He is showing the rest of Shadow NATO that they can fight a war on their own terms. Data shield. Fedorov and Vautrin also discussed a new level of joint analytical cooperation. They are building a joint intelligence network that bypasses traditional NATO channels. Panic in the American intelligence community is over the fact that they are being isolated. If Europe and Ukraine are exchanging battlefield data, satellite imagery, and AI-driven drone analytics without involving America, then the American intelligence monopoly is over. The Mirage is no longer just a jet. It is a symbol of the European shield. France is effectively telling the world, America can take its F-35s and go home. We have Mirages, we have missiles, and we have the will to lead. If you want to see the internal collapse of an empire, look at the man in the middle, Mark Rutte. By Thursday morning, January 29, 2026, the NATO Secretary-General is not leading an alliance. He is managing a mutiny. Inside the halls of the European Commission, they have stopped calling him Secretary-General. They have started calling him the American ambassador in Brussels, the result of keep on dreaming. After his disastrous dreaming comments on Monday, the rebellion turned from quiet whispers into open hostility. Bypass protocols. Insiders at NATO headquarters report that French and Polish delegations are now holding meetings before the Ankara summit, and Rutte is not invited. They are essentially creating the shadow NATO agenda right under his nose, treating him like a liaison for the White House instead of the head of the table. Panic at the top. Rutte's panic is obvious. He is trying to play both sides, telling the White House he is handling the Europeans while telling the Europeans they need to be realistic. The transactional trap. But Europe no longer wants realism. It wants sovereignty. They see Rutte as the person trying to hand them over to Trump's 5% GDP fast track and Buy American order. The whisper of no confidence. There is also talk among the big three, France, Germany, Poland, of appointing a European security coordinator, a role that would effectively end Rutte's power over European defense spending and strategy. The curiosity here is how long a leader can stay in power when the people he is supposed to lead have already stopped listening. Rutte is standing on a bridge whose both ends have already collapsed. He is the face of the NATO that died the moment Shadow NATO got its first $150 billion. He is no longer the captain of the ship. He is now the person standing on the deck while the lifeboats of Shadow NATO, are being lowered into the water. So, what is the final verdict? By Thursday night, January 29, 2026, the NATO known since 1949, the America Plus 31 Club, is effectively dead. Its place has been taken by two different alliances stuck in the same building, and they are both heading for the exit. The reality of Fortress America. The White House has made its move. The 2026 National Defense Strategy was not a warning. It was a path. By declaring Europe a secondary priority and focusing on deterrence by denial in the Pacific, America has signaled that the era of the security blank check is over. Trump is not just asking for 5%. He is demanding the complete surrender of European defense sovereignty, the Shadow NATO rebellion. But the panic in Washington is that they did not expect Europe to truly say no. By ignoring Mark Rutte and building Shadow NATO through the France-Poland agreement and the $150 billion SAFE fund, the EU has proven they would rather stand alone than be a transactional customer. They are building their own command. They are preparing their own nuclear shield, and they are preparing eviction notices for American bases. The final shock. The fatal mistake was thinking that keep on dreaming would bring Europe back into line. Instead, it woke them up. The alliance hasn't just developed cracks, it is broken. By the time leaders meet for the Ankara summit in July, the Plus 31 Club will be a total ghost. We are looking at a world where America is a fortress and Europe is a giant finally waking from its slumber. The border of the West has shifted from the Atlantic to the edge of the shadow NATO line. And in 2026, loyalty is not measured in treaties, but in who holds the keys to the armory. The Ankara summit is the final count. I'm keeping an eye on the secret leaks of the shadow agenda and the 48-hour movement of French nuclear assets. You definitely won't want to miss the next update. Subscribe, hit the bell icon, and let me know. Is Europe finally ready to defend itself? Or is this shadow NATO just a dream about to become a nightmare? I am reading every comment.